Cool. All right. So this is XR Delusion Simulator. Um, Lessons from vibe coding unreality. So this is like what the hell is that, right? So a friend of mine approached me and he's doing a PhD in uh what he's calling extended reality theater. And sort of he's like, oh, I'm doing this thing that's combining traditional theater with VR and like interactive installation. And in a previous life, I used to work on this stuff, full time. I did the full time artist thing for a bit, and I couldn't resist. But of course, being sort of creative endeavor, it's one of those things that's like all requirements and no time and no budget. So fucking sign me up, right? So this is just a little bit about what I learned in the process of doing this. This really kind of kickstarted my kind of like vibe coding journey because, it was like all requirements and no time. I needed to figure out a way to cheat. So enter vibe coding. So I think this slide's about really before you start a session, asking yourself a question like, where is this code actually going to live? Because I think that is one of those things that can really drive how you approach your session. So, is this just an app? Is this an app for yourself or a proof of concept, or is this something that is used by billions of users, like a commit into Elasticsearch or something like? So this can have a big implication for your workflow. And so there's a slide here, or an example here, like there's a big difference between a Sweebench winning prompt and make it cyberpunk, lol. So the Sweebench prompt is actually the one that Toby mentioned before. So this is that big long blob of text that I basically ripped off for our own purposes. I actually do encourage you all to read this. It is actually quite interesting in how they sort of break these things apart and talk about how it should reason through problems and that sort of stuff. So, um, context is king. So even if you're using a 1 million token context model, like at the minute, they're pretty weak. If the context is beyond even 50%. So, as you can see from the little comic there, it's pretty accurate from my experience. So, um, one thing to be aware of is tools. I think are the silent context killer. So if you're getting excited about MCP and you're importing all of these tools, just be aware that could be taking up 50, 60, 70% of your context. It's actually crazy. I think it's really worth actually inspecting a raw prompt that goes out to, via Cloud Code or there's an open source one as well, Code. You can actually inspect all of the tool stuff, and it's insane. So yeah, practice Yagni. You ain't gonna need it. So if it's not serving your purposes, then don't put it in there. And instead of bringing over an entire directory of files for into your session, it's helpful to do, at particular file or even a specific class that you want it to look at. Examples, LLMs love examples. So like as fun as it is to just say, hey, LLM, go and do the thing, they can often get tripped up. So this is particularly useful for things related to like output formats and stuff. So, you can say convert this file to Markdown. It's probably going to do something Markdown E, but it might not be what you want. So if you can sort of bracket it between a very specific example, give it a full input, give it a full output, and then your input at the bottom, your actual input at the bottom, it can really yeah, help you get better results. And this is kind of related to that last slide here, prompt structure. So this is more related to if you're using LLMs with APIs. So if you've got a big Mondo prompt, with a lot of information, it can be really helpful to wrap your sections using something like Markdown or XML or whatever. And it's weird, like each model kind of has its own preferences and what order and what kind of markdown and separator like separators that it wants. But generally speaking, you kind of want your like role persona at the top. That's getting less and less important, but that's kind of where it sits at the minute. Your rules or guidelines, and then the task at hand, maybe some information about formatting, fully fledged example. And at the end of all of that, then you can put the thing that you want it to do. I do have an example here for a thing that I wrote to do Terraform transformations. So you can see here, I've got a role here. I probably can't even see that. You got a role here, and then it's, some bracketed instructions, an example, and then, blah inputs. Check the vibe. So tests are a really great thing to do, when you're involved in these sessions. I really encourage you to actually read the tests as well. I've seen some really bullshit tests come out of these agentic sessions where it's just like mock, 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 and it's not actually testing any of the behavior of the code that it's barfed out. So, and also if you're involved with, say, you're trying to do a bug fix or something, and you know something is broken with the code, you might need to tell it, don't touch my tests, because I've definitely had some instances where the agent will hack your tests in order to fix the issue. And semi-related as well is use languages with types. Types are great. Um, they sort of are a really nice way to ground your LLMs and get them to yeah, they act as like a self-documentation layer in a lot of ways and help them to understand what the important ins and outs are of your thing that you're writing. Um, Feedback. So related to testing, like feedback is really when your sessions really rip, where you can hand it, say, an MCP to do UI testing or to do like mobile app testing, where it'll literally build your app, upload it into a simulator and do UI testing. You can tell it how to run your like integration tests if you're working in like a back-end app of some kind. There's some chat there. Make sure that I'm not missing anything there. Cool. Um, Next slide here is about killing your darlings. So sunk cost fallacy is over. Basically, I like to think of programming now as almost like a search problem, and you're trying to find the most optimal place in the space of all possible programs. Um, and often it's cheaper to just delete the thing that you wrote and start again, knowing what you know from that, first search, than it is to go and backtrack and find your way. So basically what I'm saying here, code is cheap and time is not. So yeah, take your learnings and generate something that is readable and maintainable and that sort of stuff, rather than that POC that you just can't help adding another band-aid on until it's, a horror show. Um, PRDs and plans. So this is a really common, like this is a pattern that's really emerged. That seems to be pretty common these days. So telling your agent to just add a feature is fun, and it might take you in interesting places, but it's quite unlikely that it's going to take you where you want to go. So it can be super handy to just write a markdown file and like say requirements.md, tell it what you want to do, some behaviors, and more than that, you can also tell it like particular technologies that you want to interact with, links to specific libraries that you want to use, maybe examples of even whole projects that you want it to emulate. um, can be a really nice way to kind of ground the LLM to create a plan. And so, with this plan, use a real like it's nice to use a really smart model that might take a bit longer or is a little bit more expensive, something like Opus 4 or Gemini Pro or GPT-5 reasoning, or are really good options for this kind of thing. And it can sure and also ask for multiple approaches as well. This is a really nice thing that I've started to do as well is, for a specific problem, I ask it to give me three separate options to solve it, and then you're able to kind of mix and match the things that you think um, work for your solution. And so now you've got a big ass Plan MD. It looks great. Let's go with it. You can then ask a dumber, faster, cheaper model, something like Sonnet 4 or Flash, to go ahead and implement that plan. It can be really handy if you ask the LLM to or the agent to come back after implementation phases so that um, you're including yourself in the loop and you're able to kind of keep things on the rails. That frontier of being able to let things run longer and longer is increasing, but yeah, I mean, at the minute, I wouldn't want an agent running for more than, you know, 10 minutes. And that's going to be laughable in the future, but for now, I think that's kind of the max I would want something to be working for. And yeah, related to that as well, one thing at a time, right? Don't conflate a bug fix with a feature in your in your sessions. It can confuse both you and the LLM. So my finding is like doing less at once ultimately saves you time. And don't forget about other modalities. So like these systems understand images, and it can be a really amazing way to add context into your conversations. So this is an example here. I made this butt ugly like admin console for the experience that we created. And I thought, well, hell, I'd like to reskin it and make it prettier. So I literally just said, here's my UI, I had the code in the editor. Here's the flyer for the thing that we made. Please reskin the UI based on the flyer. And it did this in one shot and just completely blew my mind. So you can use images in the same way, it doesn't necessarily need to be a UI thing. It could probably even just be like a screenshot of a logging session or whatever. So, and I think actually this is probably the most important slide of the deck. Touch grass. This stuff is crazy. It is moving so fast. There's so many tools and so many people vying for AI supremacy that it can be so easy to get overwhelmed, and it can be very easy to what I call FOMO thrash, where you just want to use every tool and you're just moving between lots of different things and not actually soaking it up. So if you're just getting started, I think it's I don't know, for me, just pick one tool, use that for at least a week, and you'll kind of start to understand that a lot of these tools are really just wrappers of the same ideas and models and all that stuff. So just chill, man. Um, and that's it. So yeah, the installation was a massive success. We got some press and there's a Guardian article if you want to learn a little bit more. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you very much. Any questions or anything?